Calling the meeting to order at 7:32. And I'll do roll call. Barry Johnson, I'm here. Mark Rubin. Randall Freed, not yet. Abigail Velasco is here, and Scott Mandel.
Present.
Thank you. So we have a quorum. Approval of May 3rd, 2023 Transportation Committee minutes. Everyone should have received those. So I can just say, hearing no objections, we'll consider them passed. Number 3 on our agenda, update by the committee chair. Just wanted to mention at our May board meeting, both of our motions passed by the board. They were the one about livable communities, not overriding community plans or specific plans, and the other one that passed had to do with the ignored stop sign at the northeast corner of Clink Street and Goodland. It passed and is the motion's gone out to be looked into. Moving on to number 4, do we have any public comments on non-agenda items tonight? Okay.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having this meeting. Just one issue, you didn't provide food. You should provide food, like from Laurie's, roast beef. That would help with my kosher digestion. Caviar is helpful too for my eyesight. That would be greatly appreciative. All I have to say is this committee and this board runs pretty good, very good compared to Van Nuys, where part of Van Nuys' motion today is they're trying to figure out how they could have committee meetings. This is right in their motion, a bunch of retard assholes over there. That's why I hate them over there, and I'm glad I'm divesting my assets from that area, then I can just tell them to go burn it all down, all I care. So if you want to make sure on how not to run a meeting, check out Van Nuys Neighborhood Council and the socialist named Kathy Schreiner, the president. Thank you.
Thanks. Go ahead.
Just a question, does anybody know when this new stoplight at Whitsett and Valley Spring is going to be turned on?
I haven't heard. But I would email Mehmet in Nithia's office, Mehmet Berker.
Not to discourage you, but we waited for almost a year after the light, which this committee worked on for 8 years, the light at Ventura and Berry. We waited about a year after it was installed before it was turned on. So I'm hoping you have much better luck than that.
I hope so too. I also received a notice in my mailbox yesterday from an asphalt company saying that they're top coating on my street and that we can't park on it after 6 a.m. So they're allowed to tell us we have to park overnight, or we're supposed to get up at 5 to embark on.
They did, yeah, because they did it on my street, although I've never seen the stuff that has a coating that has rubber in it. That's new to me. My street was just, they call it slurry. But yeah, if you have to either park somewhere else the night before or get up and move it before 6, yeah.
I'm the block captain for my neighborhood, I know you're shocked. And several of my neighbors were worried because the only crime we have in our happy little hamlet is break and enter to cars. That's like,
yeah.
So,
but they'll tow it if it's still there at 6. And then the other thing I've seen is people parking their driveways because they don't pay attention to these notices. And then the next morning, they get out and drive on this wet coating. And to this day in my neighborhood, there are tire marks on the street that shouldn't be there because they drove on it when it was wet. And you actually, if you're walking, you could actually trip on it. It's such a kind of little valley in the street, so.
okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else on number 4?
We
Yes.
had our first traffic accident at Witsit and Valley Spring. So, and I guess they're waiting for the lights to come in to get their act together. But, I
Well,
didn't-
are they putting a light there or Valley Hard?
Valley Hard. So
Okay,
anyway, they're still piling up, waiting for that light to come in, and I'm sure they'll behave.
yeah. And I still wish, even though they would, besides painting the curb red, they need the signs along there that say no stopping anytime, because people still stop in the red. Both trucks and patrons of sportsmen's. So, any responses to any of the public comments from the committee? Okay. I'll move on to number 6, our main event, discussion and possible motion with respect to the parking and traffic issues, as well as the current conditional use permit requirements, all concerning the entirety of the Sportsman's complex in Studio City. And I will say that after this agenda went out, the 2 representatives that we had names for at Sportsman's declined to come. They were told by higher ups not to attend and actually want to get sort of a summary of what we talk about tonight before they can address anything, because they didn't feel they were high enough level people to perhaps address comments right here and there. And one of them I do know, Fred Kim, is not even really involved in proposed development there. He's really just the current manager of the shops at Sportsman's. So we're recording this meeting so we can send it to them and hopefully get responses. So my intent tonight is to do 2 things. One, to address the parking concerns of the neighborhood north of the river. And that also involves various commitments made by when they got their CUP and other basically memorandum of understanding for building the shops at Sportsman's, where the employees were going to park. And it's my understanding that says the employees park on site, and also that document has that the parking was to be free, so employees would park there if it was free. But if I was an employee there, I wouldn't want to park there and have to pay either. So they've gone against that, and the employees, in a way, are almost victims, because it's not even their employers that have caused this, it's the owners of the property. And then secondly, we want to see if we want to go for a motion to ask our council member to ask, basically she has to ask LADOT to get the ball rolling for a preferential parking district, which we have done before with Councilman Krikorian when he had all of Studio City. We did 3 or 4 different ones, and he always signed off on them. We have not done one with this council member, and don't know how she will vote on this, or if she'll give a motion to LADOT to go forward. So that we'll be testing the waters there. And then lastly, other issues of the CUP, which many of you have reported, like it says no outdoor music, yet they've had outdoor music a couple, 2 or 3 different times that I know of. So I know we have some residents here that can also address that, and that's something we may, other than your preferential parking motion, the other items, we may do a president's letter, which our President Scott, who's here tonight, would write to the management of Sportsman's, the shops at Sportsman's, just saying you are not following these things in your CUP, and list off the items, employee parking and the music, and include that with the recording of this meeting tonight to their representatives to respond. So with that, we'll do some public comment for anyone that wants to speak on this item right now. And yes, you were the first hand, so yep, go ahead and come up. Peter was second, and then we'll go with you. Yes.
Without addressing the merit, and this is just on a legal standpoint, when you write your letter, you tell them the issues and that you expect a response in hand by this date, or you'll consider it a non-responsive. Then you put a little nastygram part in there, then which I do often, saying if this if you don't respond, it'll be considered somewhat of a denial or non-position, and it'll be referred to the city attorney's office regarding having the CUP revoked. That is, and also when you send out that letter, and I have no problem doing it because I'm a nice guy, if you provide me a copy, I'll be glad to give it to every single one of them, of the retail owners there that do the storefronts, and make sure they get a copy and send it to their agent of process according to their corporate papers. That puts a little bit more influence on that I suggest. But the issue is to contact city attorney's office, not the DOT, to see how to have a CUP revoked. That says what it means. Thank you.
And you would send it to the individual shop owners just so they're aware that we're actually trying to help them?
Well, the issue is you get something under the Civil Code 389 called parties of interest. And that's how I would write it as. The reason why I would send it to their agent of process, an attorney will see that for the shop owner, and they'll say, why are we dealing with your junk? And in their leases, there's attorney fee clauses, I suspect, and so forth. The key issue is you just want to show so much of a mess where it smells a little until it smells a lot. And I do that daily with my adversaries and so forth and other attorneys. So it's a nice little nastygram. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Peter?
I don't have anything prepared except one little soundbite here, but I'll play that in a moment. I look at this as a preemptive strike against multiple fronts. So we have the ramp, that's the proposed ramp at Coldwater on the north side that Krikorian put in his, I don't know, it was a 2020 letter as a public benefit, which I see no public benefit in it, to build this ramp. And that will, unless the parking situation at Sportsman's is dealt with and they keep their parking on site or somewhere else, that is just making us the de facto overflow parking lot for Sportsman's. I think there's only 440 spots, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think 440 spots that were earmarked for this project, which we all knew wasn't enough. And I believe the hotel parking in front of the hotel was off limits for this. And I know it's a weird thing because the hotel's not open, but they were not supposed to use the hotel parking. On a daily basis, it's all full. So I counted multiple times, there's over 500 cars on that lot at any given time. So they're definitely over. The majority of the parking that's happening in our neighborhood on Woodbridge mostly is Erewhon parking. And I believe they have 200 employees. I don't know where they go at what time, what the schedules are, but it's mostly that. I do see patrons also there. We've had meetings about the proposed residences being built next door, and there was one meeting that we attended, and Ben Besley, who I guess is no longer with Midwood, who was had stated I'll play the statement about parking, and it was quite shocking that until we heard this statement that they actually have no plan for parking, for temporary parking during construction. We have no timeline for the actual amount of time that it will take to demolish the hotel and build the underground parking. I can't believe it's 6 months. It seems like it's a year or so, or two, or what, a year and a half. But I want to see if I can cue up this clip from Ben Besley here, which I think is important.
And always they say it's going to take 6 months, and just the building industry in general always takes longer
Sure.
than they estimated.
Twice as long, twice as much.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can play this clip here.
We have a general contractor on board who's put together a very, at this level of design, a pretty sophisticated and detailed, idea of where people are going to park. I mean, primarily they're going to have to go find, lease space offsite at one of the properties nearby or something like that initially. And then as they build, they actually can, start parking some of their own vehicles in the parking structure and the like.
I think it was asked of the bid president, or somebody at the bid, where if there's any available off-site parking. I don't believe there is any, and we should revisit that and ask the bid. That's why I'd written to the bid today to ask them to join this meeting. But this was a shocker. So now we're gonna have 500 cars going where? I did a rough calculation. I don't know if it's accurate. I'm not a transportation guy, but it's a football field and a half of cars. And I don't know of any lot or any area besides the Harvard Westlake football field to put these cars. So we've got that. It just looks like between the ramp and Midwood not responding to our concerns, they're just gonna destroy our neighborhood.
And I think when Ben said that, what he didn't say was essentially that off-site parking is your neighborhood.
Right. And this is nothing new. We've complained about this from when Weintraub had the project. Kudos to them. It's a success, but their success is our demise.
And the other thing they always talked about was, they can use the off-site city parking lot across the street from Arts. Mm-hmm. Well, that, who's going to pay for that, and who's going to shuttle the employee, if it's for employees, who's going to shuttle back and forth? Because certainly patrons are not going to go park there and walk 3/4 of a mile,
They're going to use Ralph's, which I think they are.
Yeah.
They use the neighborhoods. And it's not just our neighborhood. I know south of Ventura, they also have issues. I know somebody was going to try to come tonight who couldn't, who's affected. And I don't know what to say to the fact that we have to do this video when I have documented tons of emails and meetings with Ben Besley, who I assume had some conversations with the people that are now Fred Kim and whomever else is there, who I don't know, about the issues in the neighborhood. And it's like, what, we're going to start over now? It doesn't ring true. This is really disingenuous. And we've had lots of conversations with Ben Besley. I had emails, and you were probably on the email where I included maybe 30 people from the city planning, everybody I could find, about the conditional use violations. And Ben's comment was, well, I hope you'll come and enjoy the event, and that's it. They don't care. I've also, there was one thing which, there was construction going on at 11:30 at night, 11:30, 12 o'clock at night, the new rotisserie chicken place over there. They were saw cutting concrete at 11:30 at night for an hour and a half, 2 hours. And I went over there. I have all that on close-up video, and complaining to building and safety. And their comment was, sort of off the record. Well, this was, during COVID. They go, well, since COVID, they pretty much cut our, what's off, and we have no enforcement anymore.
And you didn't know this at the time, and I've done this, but you could call LAPD's non-emergency number, but you're on hold for 45 minutes or an hour,
LAPD.
and they will come out and stop them. But it'll be an hour before they're out there.
That's exactly what happened. They
Yeah.
came out there and it's too late, and then you have to follow it up. This also speaks to the whole conditional use permit with Harvard Westlake. I don't know, maybe it's a different deal. And there needs to be a committee that does nothing but conditional use permit, issues, and, like a board. It needs to be official. It just can't be that, it's them again complaining because they're the closest one to the project. It's a full-time job for a couple people to follow up on this stuff with all the roadblocks from the city. And I'm sure Midwood knows it, and that's why we're all here tonight. Anyway, that's generally it. Thank you.
Thanks. Next.
That would be me. Hi there.
Hi.
So I'm Pam Friedman, and I live at 4218 Alcove Avenue. My concerns are the lack of, I'll call it enforcement, or these conditional use permits are presented. They are what they are. They're conditional use permits. These are issued in order for projects to go forward. I can tell you that the parking and traffic issues since the very inception of that project have been a concern of that entire neighborhood, not just my street and the ones adjacent, but across Ventura, across Coldwater Canyon, and that, it's Sherman Oaks, but it's still affected by that. It's quite frankly appalling to me that I have to keep coming to meetings and there's nobody, of authority and there's no consequences for them to just step over their legal obligations and just thumb their nose at us and you and everyone else. So I'm here tonight just to find out, quite frankly, what are the consequences? We can send letters, and we have. I've been at many, many meetings with Ben Beasley, who was their agent on site. He's now gone there, and now it's like, well, we don't know who's in charge. Well, I don't know. I'm just curious as to what can we do that will either result in some kind of a fine for them, some kind of consequence that will prevent them from just thumbing their nose at the community and this board and doing what they please. And it's only destined to get worse as time goes on. So you guys tell me, but I'm on record with this is unacceptable, that the legal aspects of this are being just flaunted in our faces. So that's it, thank you.
And I think a president's letter definitely going to the city attorney and the council member would be appropriate for enforcement, because it's not, you can't call LAPD every time they decide to do music. It's got to be something that their legal action is threatened, by the city on them.
Well, there at that and the parking in particular for my money, that was a big bone of contention from the very, very beginning. And they had free parking there until September of last year, when they canceled all of those employees' parking badges because, wow, it got busy. Who knew? Now, I feel badly for the employees. They have to find their own parking, but it's only destined to get worse. So something needs to be done. I don't know Nithya Raman. I did not vote for Nithya Raman, and I won't be voting for Nithya Raman unless she steps up into this community. Thanks.
Thanks. Yes?
We need to go there?
Yeah, because we're recording the meeting to give to them, so
Feel like I'm some sort of civic committee, you know?
maybe you can pull it a little closer, maybe, okay.
I was more,
All right,
my name is Charlotte, I live on Alcove as well. And two things, I wanted to first comment on, follow up on what she was saying about the accountability. You were mentioning they were not following their CUP, sorry. What is the account, like right now, if you didn't, you know, if a lawyer went to them and said, you're not following this, what happens to them? Is there any accountability at all?
It would have to be legal action threatened by the city of LA, because they're.
What I'm saying is, if there's no accountability, why would anyone ever follow it? Anybody,
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
that's my problem, like, that's my bigger question of what is the recourse of, what are the consequences? Because otherwise, people are gonna do anything they want. Yeah, I mean, that's the, William, I was following, like, you had said that before, and then want to follow that up, so that would be my biggest question in the president's letter. What recourse do we have, because there's no consequences? So, anyway,
And that's the way of the city of LA these days. There's no enforcement unless, you know, 100 people or more from a community say there needs to be. There's no enforcement just being done on their own by the city. And I always say the only thing that's ever enforced in the city of LA is if you murder someone.
Yeah, that's true. It's a big city. There are a lot of those too. But what if someone did enforce it? Do we have any idea of what the repercussions would be? Is it monetary? Is it they pull the permit for them to have the parking to pay? Like, you know, do we know what the?
I think it could be pulling their conditional use permit, and I think it could be a fine. Because I don't know that they pull the permit, because I don't think they would try to make the shopping center go out of business, because they're just the managers, and that would affect seemingly innocent little businesses or chains even in the complex.
Yeah.
So I would think a fine might be where they would first go.
And then the other thing too, just to accentuate the traffic is, as you know, there's a lot of people walk around that neighborhood, walk dogs, walk kids. I mean, it's full of kids and bikes and dogs, and the increase in people going, not just driving through, but driving through quickly, which usually implies to me they don't live around here, they're cutting through. And that is also increased. So it's a danger. My fear, not just parking, is someone's gonna get hurt, someone's gonna get killed. And that's when they'll do something, because it'll be like a murder, and they'll finally do something. And then the next question I had is, or a comment is, it's LA, we know about production, half the people work in production. Parking is one of the first things you have to deal with when you do production. You have to pay a lot of money, you have to find, where do you park? You have to find a place and you have to pay for it. I'm kind of laughing if this becomes this issue, like it's not a big deal for this huge construction project. Well, they have billions of dollars. Your budget is tiny compared to this. So anyway, I just want to say, I don't understand how a business can run and not have to be accountable for their employees. When we make in this town so much money on parking, people charge money for parking, they should be doing the same thing somewhere. Give them parking, charge a bunch of money, use that to do everything else. Anyway, I think, was there anything? I think that's it. Thank you.
And Midwood just hasn't done that. Yeah.
Anyway, but thank you guys for being here and doing this, because it's really important. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And then the next person behind you.
My name is Terry and I live in the neighborhood. We have lived in the neighborhood for 3.5 decades. I don't see any reason for this ramp, if it's meant to help people who are using the river walkway, the Zeb walkway. I think that it should just continue under the bridge. Building a ramp near this parking lot is clearly just to enable people to flood in to the parking, to park in the neighborhood, because that's what, that's the problem, is parking. And I also attended meetings before this was built, and I listened to Ben, and he over and over again talked about how the parking would be taken care of, and he had a million different plans for it. But now that it's open, we can clearly see there's a huge parking problem, and if they are allowed to build 8 stories full of condominiums, it's even gonna be worse. As far as the CUPs go, they're not worth the paper they're written on, because wealthy landowners or entities can afford to fight them legally. They don't care about fines, and the city never gets around to yanking anything for the reasons that you said, whether it's depriving school children of their brand new sports complex, or it's shutting down a mall full of people who are working and shopping. The CUPs mean nothing, and they're very rarely rescinded, and they usually just end up going back and forth to council a million times. So I wouldn't depend on any kind of a CUP to do anything.
Thanks. And I was just going to say, keep in mind that the ramp on the north side of the river at Coldwater, it's connected to the Harvard Westlake project. So it's not really something we can address to Midwood. I mean, they know there are people in the neighborhood that don't want it, but it's like, to stop it, it's got to be stopped through Harvard Westlake. So go ahead, the next person.
Hi, I'm Andrea Scher. I live on Goodland Avenue up from Petco. The parking there they're parking on both sides up now south of Petco. There are so many little kids on our street and it's impossible. I asked one of the ladies who was parking, can I just ask, where are you going? And she's an employee of the gym at the complex. So it's just getting worse and worse. And just a small incident that's really not related to this, but somebody was coming down our street and I did this to her. And she stopped and swore at me and said, I've got a gun, I'll kill you. And when I was trying to tell her that there are all these little kids, she said, I don't care. So this is how things are becoming so much worse in our neighborhood. And they still want to build the Sportsman's Lodge. They want to build Harvard Westlake. They're talking about building across the road from Bed and Bath. And the traffic's already it's a standstill. So I don't know what we can do, and I also would like, if somebody can tell me, we do need to have those parking speed bumps, because we've got 47 little children on our street between the age of birth and 10 years old. And I just don't know what we can do anymore. My grandchildren live on the street, so it's even more personal to me. So that's all I have to say.
Has your street applied for
We
speed
did.
humps?
We did, and I don't know, but apparently we have one camera there, and apparently, and I may be wrong, but I recall them saying with the construction, with the Amazon and all the deliveries and the people and the gardeners and everything else, there are about 500 something cars going up and down our street every day. And it's a cul-de-sac. So it's just very, very scary.
In your Goodland
Avenue,
and
just south of Coldwater, when you go up from Petco, and it goes up to Goodland Avenue, Goodland Drive, and just in, not even the whole of our little geographic area, there are 47 little kids. I've counted in every house. So.
well, I'm glad we have a representative from south of the boulevard too.
Because it's no different than what they're experiencing north.
Your neighborhood doesn't have preferential parking, does it?
No.
Do you know that if the neighborhood would be interested?
Some people are keen. Personally, that they don't really. I don't mind. I mean, I can't see out of my driveway when I try to reverse out, but I haven't really been bothered that much by the parking. Harvard Westlake used to park. Their students used to park there. They don't anymore, and they do leave in the evenings. But it's just that the roads are getting narrower because of it, and there's so many people walk their dogs up the road. I'm just worried that somebody's going to get killed. So that's my
Okay.
main thing.
Thank you so much. And I did want to point out that the president of the bid, as well as the manager of the bid were both invited to be here tonight. Oh, they are here. And do they have anything they want to add?
I'm not sure there was anything that's directly within our purview on this.
I'm just curious if the bid knows anything about their parking requirements.
The bids parking requirements or sportsman's parking?
It's the sportsman's.
No, I don't know anything more than all of you know.
Okay,
Probably know less than all of you know because you're very involved.
yeah. Okay,
I mean, we don't get involved in negotiations with, private property.
yeah. Well, and you would probably only be made aware of a violation if, the city attorney came down on them. You might get notified, perhaps, I don't know.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Vicki Nussbaum. I'm the executive director of the Studio City Business District. And we're a nonprofit organization, formed to basically replace services that the city no longer provides. So we trim the trees on Ventura Boulevard, we sweep the sidewalks. We no longer have street sweeping on Ventura Boulevard, so we sweep the gutters, we do power washing on the sidewalks, we landscape the medians, we have a security patrol. But we're not a planning department, we're not a development organization. We have a relatively small budget that's kind of very focused on what I would call clean, safe, and beautiful services.
and you don't get into enforcement of stuff that the city should be doing
No.
because you have your plate is full just doing the stuff you do.
As you say, I mean, we have no teeth to do anything like that, even if we were to desire to do that, we would have no.
Can I
Thanks.
ask you a question?
Yeah.
So the fees that go to the bid, those come from the shop owners indirectly through, let's say Sportsman's, use that as an example, that's what we're here. Is Sportsman's pays those to you, the shop owners don't, it's just the cost of doing business that's passed through?
Depending, right, so every business improvement district, certainly in the city of Los Angeles, and I think in all of the state, is formed when the majority of property owners in kind of a continuous area, and in our case, our business improvement district is on Ventura Boulevard from Coldwater to Carpenter, a little bit of Laurel Canyon and Ventura Place, and those property owners vote on whether they want to pay extra money that's billed to them on their county property taxes. So it's the property owner pays the assessment, so in this case, it would be Midwood that pays the property assessment, and some property owners choose to pass that assessment on to their tenants. Other property owners just pay the assessment as part of their own, expenses. We had nothing to do with that, that's just how they manage their business.
Thanks for that explanation, because a lot of us didn't know exactly.
That's what I wanted just to explain.
Yeah.
And the bid has to get re-voted on every 5 years, we're actually up for vote again. This current bid would expire January 1st, 2025 if it's not renewed.
And I don't know if you can say or not, but has Midwood been a good member of the bid?
Oh, yeah, I mean, and from the bid's perspective, I mean, the bid is funded through property taxes, so as long as someone's paying the tax bill, we are paid, and yeah, all our property owners, I mean, the majority of our property owners are very appreciative of the services that we do provide, given that the city no longer provides those services.
So as far as, cleanups and whatnot, I noticed that to the north of the driveway on Coldwater, the entrance to Sportsman's, there's I don't know if it's a county trash can, a city trash can, but it looks like a work of art because it's like how much trash can you, graffiti can you put on a trash can? It seems odd that next to such a high-end retail spot that, I'm gonna keep going with this, that Midwood couldn't make the effort to call you guys to take out the trash or whatever. Also, a couple of us did a cleanup on the north side of the river and drove behind the property. And in that cleanup, there's tons and tons of parking kiosks papers. So somebody took trash from Midwood from Sportsman's and dumped it on the north side. In addition to one of those signs that we kept complaining about the Erewhon's deliveries happening, they're parking on Coldwater. And so they made up signs that your trucks can't park here. We found one of those signs cut up in the river. I just think that, just as I do with my own neighbor's property, if I see something on the ground next door, I pick it up. And I find it hard to believe that Midwood, in an effort to be a good neighbor, wouldn't spray paint over the graffiti that's on their property, because there's fences now, they're doing some construction there. I don't know if it's their construction, but these fences are on their property, there's graffiti there, and just deal with that trash can, as well as monitor what's being thrown in the river. I've complained about the encampment that was on the south side for probably a year. I don't know if it was my complaint to Ari Engelberg over at Harvard Westlake that 6 months later that encampment got done, but I don't know, these are big businesses with deep pockets and ties to the city, obviously, because I know some of those deals, and it just seems like they could go a little further being, good neighbors. So you have 1,000-pound gorilla over there, and I know you get your fees when you service all these retail stores. It seems like it's a disproportionate amount of trouble that can be caused for your organization if Midwood doesn't adhere to their conditional use permit, if they don't clean up, if they don't make sure that cars aren't parking and stealing other spots from other people because they don't want to put enough parking in. So, well, it may not be the bid's jurisdiction. I just think as we're all neighbors, we all need to maybe cross over the lines that are directly responsible. And you've always been very receptive.
Yeah, I came here to listen because I know a couple of you invited us just to listen to the issue, so I really wanted to listen. It's the first time I'm hearing this directly from you guys, but it isn't directly our jurisdiction. Those black cans that you're describing, the ones that have like polo or something in multiple languages, I think, if they're not graffitied all over, belong to the city, and the city is supposed to empty them. We could request, frankly, that the can is removed. Sometimes it's better not to have a can there because it does overflow and the city doesn't service it and they don't clean up the graffiti. I think it doesn't look good.
Well, the graffiti that's on, I don't know if that's a city project going on to the north of Sportsman, but it seems like it's on their property.
Right.
And part of their conditional use permit, they have to have that stuff cleaned up within 24 hours.
Yeah.
It's been there for
Love
months.
that. Yes,
So, yeah, I think, that's what I mean, because, it's a full-time job for us, and if you know who to call to either get the can emptied, removed, or replaced, it'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, I know you have my email, you're welcome to email me and, you can walk over and look at that can, we can take a picture. The first thing I would do is report to 311. You have many pictures of it, I'm sure. And, simply 311 to tell them to come empty it. But the problem is they empty it once and then they're not gonna empty it the next week, so it doesn't solve the problem. And so the real problem may be to find out, I don't know who's filling it out.
Well, I would think that the businesses that are there, and I'll say specifically, it's the ones at the front there are Equinox and Erewhon. As they walk by, I go, that doesn't, it's just such a chasm between haves and have-nots, and it's like, why don't that, either of these businesses speak up to Midwood or figure out how to get this stuff dealt with? It really looks bad.
Yeah. It's north of the driveway?
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Vicki, for attending, because having you here was great for the people that had a few questions
Yeah, no.
regarding, the connection with the bid to Midwood and stuff. Yeah.
As far as getting things done and who to complain to, does alcohol and beverage care about any of these violations of the conditional use permit? Because if they do, and a complaint is made to that entity, that now drags in the store owners into this, that they need to get involved. I find they're blissfully unaware of the project next door or anything going on over there.
I think they would only get involved if it was something that you're talking about Erewhon that's selling alcoholic or a restaurant.
Just the violations of the conditional use permit with live music and parking and all this. I mean,
If the live music was being put on by somebody with a liquor license, yes. But if it's just the shopping center doing it, probably not, because it's not being done by one of the occupants that has the liquor license.
So I can add to that. I've been to some of the live music presentations at Sportsman's, and the restaurants offer service to the outdoor tables where the bands are playing, and there are people drinking. There may be a nexus between the conditional use beverage versus the violations of the conditional use permit. I'll read something from the conditional use permit. There shall be no live entertainment or amplified music on the premises. There shall be no karaoke, disc jockey, topless entertainment, male or female performers, or fashion shows. There's been fashion shows, we know that, right? And I don't think there's been topless entertainment that I've noticed. But there is live entertainment and amplified music, and it is going on where there's alcohol beverage service, so that might be something to investigate. As long as I'm talking, I'll read you something from the letter of clarification from LA City Planning. All parking for employees shall be provided on site to ensure that there will be no employee parking spilling out into the adjacent residential neighborhoods. All employees shall be notified not to park on adjoining residential streets. So that's from LA City Planning. They know they're not allowed to do it.
And do you see anything in that about them having free parking? Because that should be there too. I know it is, but I just thought you could read it.
They're
but-
not allowed.
Well,
to
all
operate.
parking for employees shall be provided on site.
Yeah,
Uh,
so
Also-
that already means they don't have to pay.
We did hear, I've never seen it, maybe some of you have, there was rumored to be a shuttle going from lot 690. Lot 690 is the lot behind Bank America, going to and from Sportsman's for employees. Has anyone ever seen that? Has anyone heard that it existed?
I don't think it ever has.
But I thought we were told that there was a shuttle. Didn't Ben tell us at one of the meetings
Yes, he did.
that there was a shuttle? I went to the parking attendant at lot 690 and I asked her if she had ever seen the shuttle. She said she heard that there might be a shuttle, but she has never seen it. And we were told that there was a shuttle for employees. Not that they would park that far away and waste all their time for a shuttle. Also, I mean, just back to some other issues, the LA River under there, all of the lights have been cut, all the copper wire has been cut, and people have been burrowing under the cantilevered parking that Sportsman's maintains. And they know about it, and back to, I think, Peter's point, they don't seem all that interested in keeping their grounds very clean. Now, I know that trash can we were talking about is on the city sidewalk just north, but the Sportsman's cantilevered parking where they put barriers in there, people have burrowed under there and they go inside. So it's kind of in disrepair within spitting distance of one of the most expensive supermarkets and gyms and other facilities anywhere in LA. So it's pretty stark contrast, in my opinion.
To your point about the lights being cut, maybe this was from the previous incarnation of this project, but they were supposed to put cameras that oversaw all that area, because we had complained a lot about, as we called them, or I did, I dubbed them the Sportsman's Lodge Junior Suites under there. And they were supposed to get cameras to watch all that, and that never happened.
And I was just gonna say, it sounds like Scott already has a lot of documentation to include in this letter, going to Midwood and/or eventually to the city attorney for things that are documented that they should be doing and aren't, and things that they're allowing that they shouldn't be allowing. So we will get that drafted before the board meeting, which is 3 weeks from tonight at 7 in this same room. and we would read through that. But I was just gonna read now a proposed motion for your preferential parking, and this would have to be a motion that's sent to the council member. So here's what I have for that, unless you had more, Scott.
No.
Okay.
I mean, there's, cameras are mentioned in the conditional use permit multiple times, that they're to be installed and they're to monitor, all the premises and parking and such.
Okay, so this says, the Board of the Studio City Neighborhood Council, SCNC, requests Councilmember Nithya Raman to support a preferential parking district, PPD, for the Alcove Avenue, Goodland Avenue, Valley Heart Drive, Woodbridge Street, and Bloomfield Street neighborhood north of the Los Angeles River. And I say, see attached map, which we would create. Does that kind of spell out the area you would want?
It would, as long as it conforms to the six blocks of their required area. And I have a question. I'm assuming that when we talk about the residential area, if you're including Woodbridge or any of those, there's apartments there. And they would have to be included also in the 75% signatures that are required, that make it conditional for that area, right?
And we have done them in Studio City, and the neighborhoods that have gotten signatures have had apartments that they've gotten signatures from.
Okay.
And a lot of times the apartment owners are apartment residents are just as interested, if not even more, because they may have one parking spot for 2 or 3 cars as opposed to a homeowner that may have a driveway at least. So there's been interest.
Is that east and west of Coldwater?
For now, just east of Coldwater.
What about west? There's an easy access on the west side, and that's a big problem there as well.
West of Coldwater is Sherman Oaks, so.
No,
Is it?
it's all the way to Ethel. It's still Studio City.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's a big
Well, do you get the feeling there's interest? And those streets, keep in mind, they don't have blocks going north-south like Alcove and Goodland. They have the streets going east-west, which would be Valley Heart, Woodbridge, and Bloomfield, right?
Yes, and there's Ethel and,
To Ethel.
yeah, yes.
I know they have the issue, because one of the times I went out to witness the aftermath of an accident at the entrance to Sportsman's, I spoke to a couple people there, and we were talking, and they also have the same issue. It becomes, for this body to attract people to talk about this and apply for it, it's difficult because the outreach hasn't been great, as we know. So, I don't know, but I know that like Andrea said, she's got issues in her neighborhood I've heard about to the west of the project, and we certainly have issues. So I would imagine, they're just not targeting us. They will target us specifically if that ramp opens. But right now, everybody's getting hit by it.
So, Rick, in your neighborhood, is the problem where you noticed employee parking? Do you think it's Valley Heart and Woodbridge for the most part, or is it even Bloomfield?
You know what, I'm not sure, to be honest with you, because I live on Valley Heart. I know specifically Valley Heart, I've seen as the project, as it filled up with tenants, how it got worse. And it's always, the parking is in 8-hour shifts, or eight hours plus shifts. And I know on the Sherman Oaks side, from Fulton back east, it's already restricted during the day on Valley Heart Drive. It's 1-hour parking. I don't know, I'm not quite sure. But that is Sherman Oaks, and at any rate, so there was a need down at that end, and now the need, as far as I can see, is much greater coming from Coldwater going west.
So maybe we should include, just so we have a big enough area, probably should include the 3 streets, Valley Heart, Bloomfield, Woodbridge and Bloomfield to Ethel. I think only just to make sure you have a big enough qualifying area, but also if we get it in the initial area east of Coldwater and they can't park there, then they're going to be parking on the other side because it's still closest to the shops. So I think it's sort of, dotting our I's and crossing our T's before it becomes a problem for both sides of Coldwater. I mean, how does the neighborhood, the east of Coldwater neighborhood feel about that?
Well, I don't have a POV about it other than I've raised my hand to get signatures. I don't know anybody on the other side, but I'm sure that there will be people just like myself that have a particular self-interest involved in doing what's necessary. It's not going to be an overnight sensation. It will take, you get 6 months to secure the signatures, and then you wait for a parking study, and then it goes forward. I thought, okay, well, maybe that won't work. And then Scott said, I said, how long does it take? He said anywhere from 9 months to 3 years.
That was me.
Was it you? Okay. So, clearly people understand it's encroaching ever increasingly. And so it should, when all of these construction projects are approved, at some level they will be, let's get real, we'd love it to not be that way, but if some version of it will happen, and we will just be fighting a big battle at that point. So I'm on board personally. I can't speak for everybody in my neighborhood, but I think a committee will have to come together and get petitions signed, and we'll get what we get.
And Rick, I suspect you could ascertain the interest, at least on Valley Heart,
Yeah.
and see if there is on Woodbridge or Bloomfield.
Sure.
The other thing is, if we get this motion to NIFIA, and I was gonna, at the end of it where I said north of the Los Angeles River, I put comma, east to Goodland and west to Ethel, just so it spells out the whole area. If we don't get either Woodbridge and or Bloomfield west of Coldwater interested, at least we've covered ourselves. And as long, if only your street wants to be part of it, that's fine.
Okay.
But at least we cover the possibility of how large it may be. And if it's a little smaller, that's okay too.
I need some specifics on the option. I mean, permit parking, I need some specifics on what we're shooting for, going for.
Generally, it would be, for these neighborhoods, it would be 1 or 2 hour parking. That could vary. They might give you the choice, and we won't know till it's applied for, but 1 or 2 hour parking from 8 to 6. And then usually from 6 p.m. till 8 a.m. the next morning, it's no parking except for the residents that display the decal. So then basically at night, just the people that live in the neighborhood can park there. That's probably what they would do.
Okay.
Good.
So you could explain that to people. And then, did you get the info on how much it is?
No.
I did.
Yeah, I think,
If
yeah,
somebody wants to give me their email address, I'll forward it to you.
Great, thank you.
yeah.
Me too, please.
Okay.
It's so much a year for the residents, and you can have like up to 3. You can also buy like guest passes for 3 or 4 months, and then you can park, if you're having a party, you can buy visitor passes for so much a day. So there are options. Yes.
Is there information that we have just in the little geographic area of Ventura Boulevard, Coldwater, and then Alcove and Woodland Avenue, Woodland Place, we have a neighborhood watch group. So I could put that out, but if somebody could give me sort of the information.
For the rates,
For what the whole, whatever this is that, the spreadsheet is.
do you want to give Pam your email too? Because she has that info. And then again, that if you send that out, you'll see if there's an interest from your neighborhood.
Yeah, because a lot of the people on our neighborhood.
And do you know if there's any kind of preferential parking on Halkirk?
On Alcove, next, are there houses? On that road, there's preferential parking.
Okay, and the good news for you there is if the rest of your street wants it, they let you just add on to the existing permit, which the folks north of the river couldn't really add on to it because you're not connected. But for you, it would be easier to accomplish because you're just adding to an existing, and we actually did that in the Silver Triangle south of Ventura and west of Laurel Canyon. We added on to one once because there was a partial PPD already there. So that would be good news for you. And then if you find out that you want to do that, let me know and we'll agendize it again for a transportation committee meeting. And then we'll do a motion to our council member requesting that, adding on to an existing PPD. Okay.
Can you also then do something about the speed humps for us?
I'm sorry, what?
Could you also do something about the speed humps for us? I've tried to get.
Tell you what, can you give me your email address? And there's one or two times a year when me or anyone can contact the city and request it. They only have for a day or two, it's open to make the request for speed humps. And I will find out when the next one is and get the info to you. So if you give me your email address, I'll do that.
Do you want me to give it now?
Yeah.
M-A.
Oh, how about, can you write it down for me? Okay. Anyone else right now before the committee, and any committee members want to speak to the motion before we take a vote? Okay. Do I have a second for this motion?
Second.
Thank you, Abby. And do I need to read it again?
Did you add something?
I just added on east to Goodland and west to Ethel.
I think it would be good to read it so everyone knows
Okay.
what we're
The Board of the Studio City Neighborhood Council, SCNC, requests Councilmember Nithya Raman to support a preferential parking district, PPD, for the Alcove Avenue, Goodland Avenue, Valley Heart Drive, Woodbridge Street, and Bloomfield Street neighborhood, north of the Los Angeles River, east to Goodland, and west to Ethel. Goodland Avenue and Ethel Avenue. And Abby is seconding.
I just have a question. I guess it doesn't need to be stated as to why it's being requested? I mean, no reference to the sportsman's? Because she would say, well, why do you want it? Do they respond and say, why is it needed for that area? And then we respond, or do we make any mention of Sportsman's and the upcoming residences at Sportsman's as well? Should that be, I'm not saying it should be in there, I'm just asking.
I think it would be a separate letter.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine.
But yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, got that. Okay, so we'll vote. All in favor?
Yes,
Yes.
Unanimous, thank you. And that letter, we'll have that letter in 3 weeks at the board meeting too, that we're gonna send to the council member for the reasons why you need it, both present and possibly future reasons.
Is there, maybe in a separate letter, also bring up that originally, the traffic studies that were done for that, I don't think they counted Erewhon. Erewhon was not counted as a market in their studies. I think it was, just.
A liquor store?
Retail or whatever, that, and I don't know how the traffic studies work, but I'm sure that if it was designated as a market, and I don't know if it was, that count might have been different, but the fact that there's 440 or 442 spots that are earmarked for that, and there's over 500 there, plus spilling out into the neighborhood, it's woefully inadequate. So moving forward on approving the next project, Nithya should know that it's just horribly underserved with parking moving forward.
And we can say certainly the traffic study for the shops at Sportsman's certainly underestimated the parking requirements for the present shops.
Also, that part of the conditions on the project where they were supposed to do right turn lanes on Whitsett, dedicated right turn curb cuts on Whitsett and Ventura, as well as Coldwater, and widening and all that. And then somehow, I believe it was with a change of lobbyist that magically those requirements disappeared. So they figured that just restriping the streets would be sufficient. Do you know, Barry, offhand, there's supposed to be a light at that entrance on Coldwater? Or
At Valley Heart and
yeah.
yeah, I think it's in the works, but really early stages.
Okay. Any comments on having two lights so close to each other? You think that's gonna work?
If they time it right, it can be done. Yeah, and there are spots in Toluca Lake on Riverside that are almost as close. But I think I have seen that close
With
other
as much
places.
density that we have in the morning.
Yeah, I mean, they'll just have to be timed so, so the traffic doesn't jam up.
Well, right now it jams up past Moore Park.
Yeah,
So.
so, anybody else? Okay. I'll move on to a couple other things on the agenda before we adjourn. I don't have any new updates on the remaining board passed preferential parking district applications. When we have one that's still being added on to that I don't have any update from. So I'm gonna table that to July's meeting. And next item, do we have any comments from committee members on subject matter within the committee's jurisdiction?
Yeah,
All right.
Barry? You know where Moore Park goes under the 170 freeway? What was always the story? What's the border of Studio City there? Is that part of us? Was it like that it was halfway?
It's the 101. It's Moore Park going under the 101, and that is the dividing line between Studio City and Toluca Lake.
So we have half of that supposedly?
Yeah. But it's now all Krikorian. It used to be, Nithya used to have Toluca Lake and Krikorian had this side. Now it's all Krikorian because he has that portion of Studio City plus Toluca Lake. So that underneath is all Krikorian
And
now.
Toluca Lake.
Well, it's,
Not us.
it's still split between Studio City and Toluca Lake, but it's the portion of Studio City that Paul has, plus Nithya having Toluca Lake.
How does that affect our committee? So we have, this committee and the neighborhood council has nothing to do with it because that's not part of CDTs.
Well, we can comment on that half of the underneath that overpass that's in Studio City. Like if, let's say it's 100 feet under that overpass, we have 50 of it in.
Is under the purview of the SCNC.
Right. And Greater Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council would have the other side.
Yeah, I wanted to announce in case anybody's interested, and I don't know, I know nothing about this other than when I read about it. There was a next door announcement about a cleanup, a volunteer cleanup this Saturday morning from 9 to 11 to clean up underneath that
Moore Park.
On Moore Park, that underpass. And I'm considering going. I'm very interested to see both what happens vis-a-vis a cleanup and vis-a-vis if there's any individuals who are living under there now, which I don't know.
Well, I noticed this weekend it was all cleaned again, but yet somebody had moved into the just east of there where it goes down to the little wash there. So the tent was now there, which is a little road that service vehicles could go down. But it seems to go back and forth. Every time they clean up underneath, then they move there. If they clean there, then a day later they're under the overpass. So, but you know, count your blessings, because if it was all in CD4, like the Coldwater underpass of the 101, nothing would be done. So, because that's her stance on that. So, anybody else from the committee? Okay, last is adjournment. So I will move to adjourn at 8:44. Second from Mark. All in favor?
Yes.
Unanimous. So we are adjourned. Thank you all for coming.